Hi, this is Lisa Bardot, and today we're going to be creating a mid-century style food illustration in Procreate. The other day I came across this vintage cookbook cover from probably the 50s or 60s, and I just loved the way it was laid out and all the illustrations and wanted to create something similar. In this tutorial, I'll be walking you through drawing a variety of pasta shapes to create some really rad mid-century style art. This concept is great when you want to draw a collection or a variety of things. I use this technique to draw some Mexican food and types of fruit. In this tutorial, we'll be working with brushes from my Mid-Century Illustrators kit, a set of brushes developed to emulate the bold graphic and texture-rich commercial artwork of the 50s and 60s. To get started, I'm going to select the inker brush from the mid-century set, which I'll use for a lot of this drawing, and I'm going to go ahead and just draw a loose grid on the canvas. Then I'll create a new layer, reduce the opacity of the first layer, and then start to lay out my rectangle shapes. And I'll be sure to overlap some of these rectangles. That'll give it that look that we're going for. Then we'll turn off our grid layer and we're ready to start filling in with our pasta shapes. I like to do a Google image search so that way I have a lot of references as I'm starting to draw. Now I'll start sketching my pasta into these rectangles. The key to mid-century art is to keep everything really simple. That's why I'm not going to go too detailed with these shapes. Just try and get kind of the basic forms of each pasta shape. I'm going to fill in all these rectangles, and I'm also going to fill in the spaces in between. Okay, I'm pretty happy with my sketch, so now I'm going to start coloring in. Open up the layers panel. We're going to delete our grid layer. We don't need that anymore. Reduce the opacity of our sketch. Create a new layer, and then move it down so it's at the bottom. Another important characteristic of mid-century art is to have a limited but unified color palette. To help us out there, we're going to create a color palette in Procreate that we can refer to as we're drawing. My palette's going to consist of a yellow I'll be using for the pasta shapes. We'll do a reddish orange, a green, an aqua blue, and I think I'm going to want some orange in that as well. To draw our rectangles, I'm going to use the square fat inker brush. We'll draw our square and then use the color drop to fill that in. Whenever you're using a textured brush, such as this one, you might get a little bit of incompleteness when using the color drop. So we're just going to go over that once more with our brush. Go ahead and draw in a few more rectangles, making sure not to overlap any just yet. And we're going to give our rectangles nice sharp corners by using the eraser tool to just erase away the edges. And then we're going to create a new layer, set that layer to multiply, and draw in the rest of our rectangles. Go ahead and clean those all up as well, and we're ready to start drawing our pasta. Create another new layer and select our yellow. And for all the illustrations, we're going to use the inker brush. So now we're going to draw the overall shapes of the pasta. This isn't going to include any detail. We're going to add that in later. Now it's time to turn off our sketch layer and go in and clean up our pasta shapes. Add in some sharp edges if needed and just get them looking exactly how we want them to be. Now we get to start adding our detail. We're going to create another new layer, set that layer to multiply, and just use the same yellow that we've been using. The brush that we're going to use to add details is called Brushy Liner. It's kind of a rough, dry looking brush, and it's going to add some great texture to these simple details that we're going to add. Again, we're not going too crazy with the detail. We want to keep it as simple as possible. We'll go around to all the pasta and add just a little bit of detail to each. There's just a few things that I want to add on a layer below the pasta layer. Just some shading in there. So I'm going to sample that darker yellow color and just color in those spots. Now we get to add some fun vintagey press texture. I'm going to set the background color to kind of an off-white, like an old paper look. I'll create a new layer and put that just above the background layer. To add my texture, I'm going to use a brush from my texture maker set called Press Fine. I'll sample the color of the background and then choose a color that's a little bit darker and a little more saturated. And then kind of just draw all over to add my texture in. Each of the other layers is going to get their own texture as well. create a new layer just above the layer you're adding texture to. We're going to turn that layer into a clipping mask and then turn on the multiply blend mode. The color I'm using to add my press texture is that orange. I really like the look that it gives when it's over all the other colors. And we're going to do the same thing for the other rectangle layer. Add a new layer, make it a clipping mask, turn on multiply, and then paint in that texture. You can also use this brush as an eraser if you want to take away a little bit of the texture too. For the pasta texture, I'm going to create a new layer and make it a clipping mask like before, but this time I'm going to use the screen blending mode. This is going to create a lighter look for my texture. You kind of have to play around with the color to get it just right, but I think this looks pretty good. All done! Go ahead and choose your favorite subject matter and create your own mid-century style artwork. You can purchase the Mid-Century Illustrators Kit and Texture Maker set from bardobrush.com. I'd love to see what you make. If you're posting to Instagram, please use #BardotBrush. Happy art making! If you like this video, please subscribe for more awesome tutorials and check out one of my other videos. Have a great day!